I'm Larry Farver, and let's queer up the worldview. China's Supreme Court acknowledges LGBTQ discrimination in rare public statement. China's Supreme People's Court has issued a rare public response acknowledging discrimination based on sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression, marking an unusual move within the country's legal system. The response came after a postgraduate student in Qingdao submitted a petition through China's xinfang complaint system, urging the court to establish clear legal standards against LGBTQ discrimination. In its written policy, the Supreme People's Court Research Office stated, quote, "The opinions and suggestions you raised are of great value," end quote. The response said courts may consider public insults, defamation, and discriminatory conduct targeting sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression as violations of personality rights. It is also stated that employers could face discrimination claims for unfair hiring, transfer, or dismissal practices, while schools may bear responsibility for bullying or discipline tied to LGBTQ identity. China decriminalized same-sex relations in 1997 and removed homosexuality from its list of mental disorders in 2001, but same-sex relationships remain unrecognized under Chinese law. Activists say that LGBTQ advocacy and online discussion continue to face heavy censorship. After the court's response circulated online, related posts and articles were repeatedly removed from some Chinese platforms. According to Xiao Zhang Wei, the founder of the China Rainbow Collective Foundation, quote, "Although the reply is not legally binding, it represents a rare form of institutional acknowledgement of sexual orientation and gender identity expression related to discrimination in China," end quote. Chinese courts have recently heard several LGBTQ-related cases, including employment discrimination disputes and a 2024 ruling recognizing visitation rights involving a same-sex couple. Well, on one hand, it's good to hear that there is some progression going on in the country, but certainly we would love to see recognition of same-sex relationships go to the next level. And I know while our country, it has not maybe the best relations all the time with China in terms of trade, it'll be interesting to see where this goes. What do you think, Bobby?
Well, I think it is not a particular significant improvement, mostly because it's essentially, it could just be a form letter say that thank you for your, it might as well be a form letter say that, quote unquote, thank you for your suggestion. It might be a great idea, end quote. The legal landscape for LGBTQ people in China is essentially a gray area. It is not illegal to have same-sex relations. It is not, they cannot diagnose you for being LGBTQ as a mental health disorder, but you get no protections from it. In Chinese culture, which is deeply ingrained in familial piety and outdated Confucius ideals, where you're supposed to, go forth and multiply, and being gay is basically essentially you might as well just kill your parents in disgrace. That kind of attitude does not change unless there's some advocacy for it. Unfortunately, in China, advocacy heavily depend on the whim of the central government. One day you'll get, oh, there might be a little pride celebration in Shanghai. The next day, they'll clamp down and delete articles about LGBTQ representation in China from their online platforms because we are not supposed to be visible or exist. Alexi is chomping at the bit.
I am more than happy to defend the People's Republic of China, but I'll start with one thing first. Remember that the People's Republic of China decriminalized homosexuality before the United States did. Let's just remember that. And normally I would, 20 years ago, if you asked me who's going to be better on LGBTQ rights in 2026, I would have said the United States. But nowadays, not necessarily. Donald Trump has declared all sorts of LGBTQ activism as potentially acts of terrorism. China is at least not, I'm sorry, the bar is kind of low at the moment. They're at least not saying being queer is an act of terrorism. And I think this is a good, hopeful thing. First and foremost, if anyone's actually read Marx, He's never said you should criminalize homosexuality. Like, there's no reason for a communist country to go after the LGBTQ community.
But one has to remember, they're not a communist country.
They are actually very much a communist country.
No,
they do control a lot of their markets, and they do actually command economy structures.
They do not fit with Marx.
Yes, they do.
No, because
they
where's
don't
the proletariat?
So first off, they don't fit Marx exactly because they are Maoists, but that's a different discussion.
Where is the proletariat?
It's part of the working.
No, but it's not.
They're there. Yes, they are.
Oh,
Xi Jinping's father. Xi was in a labor camp as a child. You know that, right?
Yes, of course.
He did not grow up with big money.
No, but he grew up in a power structure that
where his father was kicked out of that power structure,
because his father was before.
No, his father was part of Mao's team, and he
then
got in trouble.
Right, exactly. So just 1 second. I worked on the breakup of the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union broke up, Russia liberalized its policies on gays and lesbians. Ukraine decriminalized. Ukraine was the first to decriminalize. And how do I know that? Because I told them that I would leave the country if they didn't decriminalize, because you can't join the West if you're going to be prejudiced towards any specific group. Russia also decriminalized. Russia now bans pride, bans all those things, and it's pretty much illegal to be gay in Russia. All of these countries that really are dictatorships can change on a dime. Comparing anything to the United States at this particular time in American history is nonsensical, because this government doesn't represent the values of America. So we have to look at each place as its own location and its actions at this time. I've also gone to Taiwan, where I talked about freedom and liberty and all of that. China does things for the overall political clout that they can gain on a global scale. This helps them with Europe. It helps them with Europe when the United States is having tremendous difficulties working with Europe. So you have to look at a much broader range of what's going on geopolitically than what's happening with something that is not a legal precedent. It is a suggestion.
So I'm confused why we're comparing an oligarchy like Russia to China's communist government. Well, first off, the quote-unquote liberalization of the breakup of the Soviet Union was a giveaway to create the oligarchs in Russia. It's why we have Putin and all of that there now. What happened in 1992 is why Russia is the way it is today. And it's a huge human rights crisis what's going on with Russia and Ukraine. But China is at least doing something decent, and compared to the way the United States has been acting, not just now, but also comparing it to, like I said, in 1997, it decriminalized homosexuality before the United States. That was Clinton and Bush era times. And it took our Supreme Court to finally do that. So I don't think it's the same thing to compare China to Russia on that.
I'm not comparing it. All I'm saying is that when you have one person who's basically in charge of the country, they can change on a dime based on the geopolitical pluses and minuses in making that decision.
But China's a very complex country. In grad school, Chinese-U.S. relations was a big part of my research. It's not just a single dictator. There's a whole aggressively complex bureaucracy.
So are all these other countries, including our own. The fact of the matter is
a little bit more top-down.
I don't know if that's true or not. I think that it looks that way on paper, but she has proven time and time again that his decision going forward now is pretty much law. And if you object to Xi, you may not be long in office.
And
that's most executives have that power. Exhibit A is the current U.S. president, where he's literally decrees. I've never seen a president do that before.
And I'm not saying that this is not a comparison between Russia, China, and the United States. This is saying that dictatorship tendencies happen everywhere. And Robert is right. As an international relations scholar, I can tell you that Russia has been an oligarchy because of the anarchy that came from liberalization and the dismantlement of the USSR. I can also tell you that Xi Jinping is now in an unprecedented third term in office. He was not supposed to have a third term. They were all supposed to have 2 terms. But somehow he secured himself in an inter-party election to be a third term. And trust me, you can't find an opposition party actually to run against him in China. And to the point, China is essentially an oligarchy dressed up as a
Absolutely.
oligarchy.
I would very much not describe it as an oligarchy, but
utopia.
I will say this, you know, China, whether you like it or not, is really becoming the new economic and moral powerhouse in the world.
Yes, no.
Yes, compared to the United... No,
we're not comparing to...
But no, when it's because who gets to lead the world, it is a comparison. The U.S. could beat China on a lot of this stuff, but it doesn't. So China is going to fill that void.
Or the EU could fill some of that void.
The EU is not going to be able to compete with the U.S.
on morality.
Leading the world.
On morality.
You can try it, but Europe is a very fractured place.
Absolutely.
China's sense of diplomacy is to occupy several island sandbars in the middle of South China Sea and call it their territory so that they can take more of the South China Sea away from the actual Southeast Asian countries.
You know that we're in a government that literally controls almost the entire ocean, right? Like we just don't need to build islands to do it.
China's idea of foreign aid is to basically build somebody an entire port of, the road with the trains and everything, and then charge the host country for it, and when they default, they just take it over and call it the Chinese bank.
That's horrific. It's not like the U.S. has been having the IMF do all sorts of
hard.
The IMF
comparing it to something that we all agree is bad.
Did we all agree the IMF is bad?
No, not the IMF.
Well, I'm now talking about how the U.S. uses the IMF to put African nations in poverty because he's claiming what China's doing is so terrible.
When was the last time America built a port and then say that's, it's American territory now, you can't pay it back?
Well, I don't know if we want to get into the Panama Canal crisis of the 1950s.
We gave it back, didn't we?
Yeah.
It was a kind of a weird thing, and then Trump wanted to take it again.
Right, but he didn't.
But he could.
Yet.
That he didn't.
And he could.
Yeah, but he hasn't taken Canada or Greenland yet either.
Yet. Isn't that the awful thing about today's politics?
And it's global.
Yeah.
There's no real good, solid place that you can trust in today's world.
But it's nice to see China at least moving forward on you're right.
Alex, I'll guarantee you, if tomorrow Xi Jinping raised 10,000 warships and overran Taiwan, the first thing that Taiwan is going to disappear is the LGBTQ rights and same-sex marriage.
That is great fear-mongering about a reunification that's probably going to be China just finding some negotiation to get them to all.
They're not going to. Xi Jinping is chomping at the bit.
Yeah.
And Trump
if he was chomping at the bit, he would be far more aggressive militarily. The Chinese just don't seem to be militaristically aggressive. I don't know why, honestly.
Because they try to do it first economically.
Exactly. On that note, there is no other queer nonprofit media platform like this in the entire world. Support our LGBTQ stories by sharing them and subscribing to Queer News Tonight.